morning, class. This is Miss Swain with Algebra 2 help for the trig packet. We're going to be working out of Unit 3 to finish up Quarter 3. We're going to start with the Unit 3 trigonometry packet, right? You all know that before school let out, we were doing like those Ferris wheel type problems, so we were working with circles. The Ferris wheel is everything about a circle. And unfortunately, there's some things we got to, there's some things we weren't able to get to. So I'm kind of just going to, like, this is like a get you right to the big idea type of video tutorial, okay? So you all first have to understand the idea of just radians. This is just the big idea, all right? Now, if you want more in-depth lessons, you all can you could go on YouTube for other videos, you could Google it, but I'm just going to keep it simple enough for distance learning. All right, so notice this circle we have here like the Ferris wheel, and I have 4 distinct points around this circle, right? When you're working with circles, you're working with degrees. Anytime you work with circles, what degree measurement is this? What degree measurement is that? Degrees, right? So when you always start here. If you're starting here, you haven't gone anywhere. Call that 0 degrees. So we're going to say 0. We're going to call this 0, and that's the degree sign, 0 degrees, right? Go counterclockwise to the next point. The next point is here. Doesn't that look like a 90-degree angle? So we're going to call this what? 90 degrees. Continue around the circle. That is another 90 degrees will put you at what? 180 degrees. And if you continue to go counterclockwise around the circle, that's another 90 degrees. So where are you now? 270. And if you continue back to the beginning position, yeah, when you started, you were at 0. But if you go all the way around, comma, you're now at 360 degrees. So these are like, so what I'm going to do, these are like the 4 or 5 introduction angles of rotation around the circle. Notice they're all in degrees. When you're working with circles, you work with degrees. But if you were working with the graphs of trig functions, so you know trig, we've been talking about trig before school let out. Like when you talk about sine, opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent, opposite over adjacent. Remember those trig functions? Those 3 trig functions that we work with in Algebra 2, right? If we were to look at the graphs of trig functions, this is not a graph, this is a circle. So if you were to look at the graphs of trig functions, right, those 3 trig functions, if you were to look at the graph of a sine function, the graph of a cosine function, the graph of a tangent function, then we don't use degree measurements, we would be using radian measurements. So before we can talk about properties of trig functions, we have to understand just like what are radians, right? So you see these 5, 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360 degrees. They each have a radian measurement, okay? Just follow along. This is not that complicated. Just follow along. So let me tell you. So if you go, so here in in radians. So you start at 0 degrees, right? And if you go completely around the circle, you went 360 degrees, right? Half of 360 would be 180 degrees. Half of 180 is your 90 degrees. Halfway between 180 and 360 was what? 270 degrees. This is degree measurements. In radian measurements, right? This is this would be 0. This would be, so memorize these. This is 2 pi. Just take it. Just take it. 0, 2 pi. Notice I introduced pi. When you introduce pi, you know that you're in radians. How do you know you're in degrees? You see the degree symbol. How do you know you're in radians? You see pi. So 360 degrees is the same as 2 pi radians. What's half of 2? 1. So here, half of 360. What's half of 2? 1 pi. 1 pi will be 180. 1 pi is just pi. All right. What's half of pi? You would be here. That's pi over 2. 270 is 3 pi over 2. Just at this point, distance learning, you just want to get through distance learning because it can be difficult, especially in mathematics. You just want to kind of understand the big concept, okay? So whenever you see radians, you should expect to see pi. Memorize 0. In Algebra 2, this is the best way to do it. 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. So you have your circle. So once again, 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees. If you go back around, that's 360 degrees, right? So the whole circle is 2 pi. Half of 2 pi is pi. Half of pi, like half of 180 is 90, half of pi, pi over 2. And if you add, so go back to pi, 180 degrees. If you add another pi over 2 to that, you're going to have 3 pi over 2. So this is the conversions or the equivalences between degrees and radians. Why do you have to know that? Because in order to graph trig functions, notice this is our graph. Notice on the graph you have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. You don't have any degree measurements, okay? So that's just the first thing you understand. This is video 1.